Hi, everybody. Welcome to a very special Conversations with Calvin, We the Species. And this is going to be a little bit of a longer monologue because it is very special because I'm with ADITI Sandhir, and I've been a mentor. I taught at Rutgers a few years ago, and after teaching, I went into the role of being a mentor with the Ward program. Um, and I've been doing that now for a few years. And Diddy and I met because she was part of the program. We met in September. And what was most, and of course, she's a sophomore at Rutgers University and the Rutgers Business School. And She's supply chain. We're going to talk about that a little bit. Uh, uh, but what was most unusual, because it was instant chemistry, notwithstanding the fact, and I got to be careful how I say this, but it is what it is. Notwithstanding the fact that we are separated by, ready for this, or did he? We're separated by 60 years. That's 6 decades. Yet, owing to her personality and owing to who she is, that 60 years got wiped out. And we were on the same level and the same plane and the same understanding and the same chemistry. So, and we should write some kind of a paper, you and I, how to wipe out 60 years.
Oh my
I'm just
God.
making this up as I go along, because because we met in
Yeah.
September, and what was most amazing, it was like once a month you do a little bit of a Zoom, you talk, and we have, of course, an agenda to talk about as a mentor to a mentee, and it's all a lot of stuff we needed to cover and stuff, but that one suggested required session a month became once a week,
hmm
correct?
hmm
So we were doing our thing once a week because there was so much to talk about, and I marveled, and I continue to marvel at you. And you're right here. I can say whatever I want to say. Uh, uh, hey, it's my podcast kind of thing. But I marvel at you because I couldn't process, and I still don't process necessarily that you're a sophomore because you have the aura and the experience and the knowledge and the whole package of being somebody who's like 30 and 40 years old. That's a positive statement. You're well beyond your years. And so these months having spent with you, and I actually came to campus, and I
Yes.
came to that it was FBLA, right?
Yeah, dining with the distinguished.
Yep, I actually came. We actually met in person, and we would have met in person a few more times, because you were the chairman of that event, and
Yes, the
right.
director of events.
Yep.
Yes.
So I remember all this stuff, um, and so it's been such a special time with you, and
Mhm.
this is our last official time together. Chronologically, this is April 25th. This will go up
Yeah.
on May 11th, right as you're finishing finals. But anyway, I'm saying it in public. It's been so special with you, your depth and your breadth, and your energy and your passion and your knowledge. It's been youthifying. I just made that word up. It's been youthifying to me. We're going to talk in this session to a college sophomore, soon to be college junior, Aditi
Mhm.
Sandhir. And so this rather lengthy, but I had to do it. Monologue is now concluded. And Aditi, why don't you say some things and some words and some background, whatever, and then we will do a regular interview here.
Sure, yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for saying all of that. That means a lot. Before I even introduce myself, Calvin and I met through the Forward program, and our mentorship relationship was like way beyond the expectations for the program. And, he's connected me with so many different people, which I think goes beyond what a mentor should be doing. So I also appreciate everything you've done for me. Thank you. All right, I'll introduce myself. My name is Aditi. I am a rising junior at the Rutgers Business School in New Brunswick. I'm studying marketing and supply chain management. Currently, I'm wrapping up my first internship as a social media intern at the Zimmerli Art Museum, which is also on Rutgers. We can definitely talk about that too. But this summer, I'm going to be joining Tapestry with brands like Coach and Kate Spade as a communications and social impact intern. So I'm very excited to be here. I'll be happy to share anything that I've learned, at Rutgers and even beyond.
Okay, perfect, perfect, perfect. Okay, um, so take us back. 'Cause I always like to ask this question, especially when I'm with students in my Rutgers world. What initially drew you to Rutgers Business School?
Mhm. Yeah, I would say it was like a lot of different reasons. I love to be close with my family. I think Calvin, you can attest to that as well. So the first thing that I decided on when I was picking my colleges was like, where can I stay close to home? My sister, who went to Penn State Abington, she was very far from home, and my family and I, we traveled a lot together. We've been through a lot together, so the one thing I realized looking for that experience as a younger sibling was that how can I do something differently so that I don't need to necessarily repeat the same patterns? And that's the main reason why I chose Rutgers Business School was because it was in New Jersey. And it's also, a Big Ten school, great reputation, and RBS specifically has so many different opportunities regardless of your background. I've truly been able to find my people here as well, whether that's like in clubs or even outside of Rutgers Business School at the Zimmerli Art Museum. I think the name itself has gotten me so many different connections, and that includes you too. So those were all the different factors that drew me to it, and I couldn't be more happy with my decision.
Perfect, perfect. It's funny. We'll talk about it further on.
Mhm.
You did an internship at Zimmerli, and it was
Yeah.
years ago that I discovered on my
Yeah.
own
Yeah.
Zimmerli, and I can't tell you how many times I've been there.
Mhm.
And to me, it 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 it's not like it's a best kept secret, but in some ways it is. This should
It
be.
truly is. Yeah.
It really, truly is. And I can't tell you how many, I have dozens and dozens. I didn't even share all those pictures and all of the events and things that I covered at Zimley. Just great. And I was thrilled,
Mhm.
when you mentioned you're an intern there because
Yeah.
I love that museum. And to me, it's just one great place to be at over the weekend. And I stress over the weekend 'cause you can,
Parking.
yeah, parking.
Yeah.
You can park, and that's
Yeah.
so nice.
Yeah.
Anyway, uh, you're pursuing both marketing and supply chain. Why that particular combination?
Yeah, I would say when I came into the business school like about 2 years ago now, I was very set on doing just marketing. I've always wanted to get into branding of different companies and organizations. And even in high school, when I took a marketing and advertising class, I was like, this is exactly what I want to do. Uh, and as a result, I think I kind of became a little bit closed-minded and I kind of didn't look at other opportunities where my skills could be a better fit as well. So then I believe it was like just a regular club event where I learned about supply chain. And then after having connected with Sarah Otto, whom you connected me with, I truly became so inspired by how rewarding the field is. I was talking to somebody at like a supply chain expo event, and she was a recent grad at RBS who only majored in supply chain management. And she said that, with AI and everything taking over, supply chain is so, like, you can see the impact that you have, whether that's you working at a company like Johnson and Johnson or you doing like the nonprofit supply chain, sector that Sarah Otto works in. I think regardless of which industry I go in, me having that supply chain background like helps me understand that yes, my work is going to have an impact and I'll be able to see that impact, which is very important for me. So I was always a creative person. That's why I chose marketing. But after having gone to RBS and after having taken some courses, I've realized that this combination allows me to pursue like both my passion and then also pursue a career where my skills are a great fit.
Okay. Um, I'm going to plug my newsletter on LinkedIn. Uh,
Okay.
I'm going to plug that now
Uh-huh.
because I thought about you. And the one that I started this newsletter 6 weeks ago, and
Mhm.
it blew me away how fast it grew with subscribers. And there's 4 sections, and the last section, and everything I'm learning about AI and the way
Right.
our world is changing. We talk about that all the time.
Hmm.
But the last section I devoted to the notion that young people like yourself, whether you're coming out of high school, you're coming out of college, whatever, or trade school, it doesn't, you're going to need 3 or 4 or 5 things to hang your hat on
Hmm.
as areas of expertise to do, because that's just the way the world is moving along. So I was so gratified,
Hmm.
when I learned about, your internship in marketing at Tapestry. I mean, I thought that was great. And you mentioned Sarah Otto. Sarah Otto was just somebody special that I interviewed who is a CEO of a supply chain, and their fascinating journey that they go to artisans in third world countries,
Hmm.
mostly women, who are unbelievably creative, and they make all these amazing things. And normally they would have been paid close to nothing, if anything, and their wonderful artistry, whatever their handcrafts, whatever, would come here eventually and be sold, and they'd get nothing. But Sarah Otto ensures that they are most definitely paid for their work and their expertise, and it's part of the supply chain that she's part of, and
Hmm.
that's one of the most gratifying. It falls under the term peace.
Right.
It enables peace and strengthens peace in our world to
Hmm.
reward people and take care of people. It's great stuff. Um, Sometimes I do get heavy. It is what it is. So how would you describe yourself in one sentence to somebody meeting you today for the first time?
Mm. Yeah, I would say these are qualities that I try to like embody every day as well. I would say I'm a very like passionate person. I'm very ambitious, whether that's in school, in my work, or in my personal life. I really try to set like reasonable goals for myself. I would also say I try to keep like a tight-knit community around myself. I think we've also talked about how important it is to have a strong network of not just people that you know, but also people that know you. So I would say I'm somebody that tries to keep a strong network in that sense. Um, yeah, those are some words I would use.
Okay, good. And we talked about that a lot. And this is,
Yeah.
maybe this becomes a training video in some shape, way, or form. But I'm
Mhm.
a great believer in networking. And we've talked about the whole notion of networking, how I sat in this chair
Mhm.
because I'm OCD. And I sat in this very chair before I wore one of them out for 2 years, five,
Yeah.
4 hours a day, 7 days a week for 2 years, connecting with people under my umbrella. Why? Certainly I've been long retired. I certainly don't need a job, but I believe in the institution of networking because
Mhm.
you just never can tell how it becomes part of your life. And
Mhm.
I could write books, and I do write books about
Mhm.
that. As a matter of fact, I have to promote. I get yelled at all the time. My 2 books. This is a business book, 10 Things I Learned from the Billionaire, because I worked for a billionaire for
Mhm.
25 years as a regional manager, and boy, did I learn stuff about that. And then my little baby, There's a Tortoise in My Hair, which is a Rutgers love story in a way. Journey to Spirit just picked up its 11th national
Yay.
award last week. Love story to Rutgers, kind of. Anyway, I mean, that's all networking. Everything in life is networking. So, moving on, you're 2 years. You've got 2 solid years into Rutgers. I love asking this question. Has anything surprised you about college life?
Yes, many things. I think it's one thing to hear about it. And I'm sure like everybody that's listening to, if they've, been to college, like I'm sure people did their research and asked their parents and everything, but it's another thing to experience it on your own. I think the most surprising thing was something I learned about myself, which was how easy it came for me to like set my boundaries and in every aspect ever. In college, like we're always taught to like say yes to everything, get involved, do this, do that, always be looking for something. But I don't think people know how important it is to like also just recognize that you have to set limits for yourself personally. So one of the most surprising things was this kind of ironic advice that I got. You should always say yes. You should always do more. But what's surprising to me was that I immediately realized that no, I actually do want to spend some time with my friends, or maybe no, I can't hang out. I have to study for this final. So that came very easily to me, which was honestly a little surprising. It was a kind of a personality shift for me too, coming out of high school.
Okay. By the way, if you see me, it looks
Hmm.
like I'm writing. It's because I am writing. I
Hmm.
take notes.
Yes.
I learned a long time ago when I was at Rutgers to take notes. So I take notes on everything. So I'm taking notes. And by the way, I have to, before I forget, this is it's such a special interview and there's such a personal aspect. So folks should know that I interviewed Diddy's mom.
Yes, you did.
Yep, and we were just discussing that, and it was wonderful. She's an author, among
Mhm.
other things, and I'm an author. I just showed you all, and that was a remarkable interview, and it's doing very well, in the ratings.
Mhm.
But that's just part, that's part of the relationship that Aditi and I have. We eventually we wound up talking about our home life and mom and dad and sister and stuff and and when she told me mom's an author, just wrote a book which uh which really resonated with me, and I said, let me talk to your mom. I'd love to interview her, and that came to be. So it's been a special, it's been
Right.
a special mentoring mentee, truly.
Mhm.
Okay, what has worked well with you as a student, and what hasn't worked well?
Yeah, I mean, I'm halfway through my 4 years, so I think this is a good question for me to reflect to. There's a lot of things that have worked well. I think it's also like a learning process, right? Like you can't expect just a fresh 18-year-old right after high school to know everything from the start. I would say something that worked well was the fact that I did stay close to home and therefore like I had an already strong supportive community going into college. That's something I treasure a lot too, is having that supportive network, whether that's the friends I came into college with, new friends that I made at Rutgers, and my family. That worked well. I would also say consistency in like my habits. Specifically in freshman year, I made it like a point to eat healthy, get the right amount of sleep that I needed, because those are like the basics, right? And if I set those habits early on, it's going to carry over into not just the next 4 years, but after Rutgers as well. Some things that I think I can definitely improve on are the habits again. But that's also slightly changed because my first year at Rutgers, I dormed on the Livingston campus, and now I'm going to be commuting from my home, which is about like 20-25 minutes away. But I think something people tend to forget is like how different commuter life is. Rutgers is a very big commuter school, but it's often like hard for me to set the same habits that I had set in freshman year. So, whether that's like going to campus because I know I need to study, but oh my God, like I have to drive 20 minutes for that. I don't know if I want to do that. Those kind of things I'm still working on, but I still have 2 years and I think I can definitely make that happen.
Okay. Okay. Um, I've interviewed so many uh, over, as I mentioned to Aditi, this probably will be my 800th interview
Mhm.
slash video. Not that I'm counting, but I am counting. So I've done 800 interviews slash videos all up on YouTube, and a lot of them because I this was born. This whole conversation with Calvin, 5.5 years and 800 of this thing was born when I was networking one day and I met a Rutgers sophomore like yourself. I don't know if I ever told you that story. I'm not sure if I did.
I
Her
think
name
you
was
did.
Claudine. Her name was Claudine Smith. She
Yeah.
was a track star,
Yep.
and we just connected on LinkedIn. And like yourself, I thought she was so grounded. And we went from just a couple of messages to, hey, would you like to talk on the phone? And we talked on the phone and grounded and do what you wanted to do. And I pinch myself. I can't be talking to a sophomore like you. I mean, I got to be talking to somebody who's 40 years old, who's been around. Um, and then my daughter-in-law was here, uh, um, and she's a social media person. And I yelled. She was in the kitchen, and I yelled, "Hey, what is this thing called Zoom? I don't know what it is. I keep hearing about it." And she came in here. She laughed, and it took her about 30 seconds to download it, and then the light bulb went off. My goodness, I could interview people, and at that time that was COVID. And I
Yeah.
had a cable TV talk show that I was producing and co-hosting, which was on hiatus. Couldn't do it. And light bulb went off, and I actually called Claudine. I said, I got this great idea. I'd like to interview you for this new channel I'm creating. And she said, yeah, that's great. Look, and that's how this all got born from a Rutgers sophomore. And so I continued early on because I didn't have the base that I have now. And I've done 6 continents. I've interviewed people on 6 continents constantly. Uh,
Mhm.
uh, um, but anyway, so I've done so many Rutgers people because
Right.
that's the bulk of what I do. A lot of what I've done, is Rutgers. So how has uh, I like to ask this: how has Rutgers shaped your thinking beyond academics?
Yes, I have a really good answer for that. And it would be about the networking topic that we discussed too. Um, Coming into Rutgers, I didn't even know like what the term networking meant. I just thought it was like everybody gets in a room and we all just talk. But after having been here, if there's anything I've taken away from Rutgers, it's how big of a community we have and that in any room, you can always find somebody that has some kind of relation to the university. And like specifically every time I spoke with you this past year, I realized that networking also, like you can't do it if you have an ulterior motive. You can't do it if you want to get something out of a person. But Rutgers and like specifically the alumni network, people are always willing to help you. It's just up to you to start a relationship. And you're the student, and for students listening, you're the student, so it's up to you to start something and for you to maintain that consistency and build the relationships. So the amount of people that I can always reach out to and they know that I'm not just gonna ask them for like a favor, like I'm genuinely interested in their life, in their work, in things that they've been up to, projects that they want to take on. That's definitely like the biggest thing I'll take away from my time at Rutgers.
Nicely said.
Thank you.
For a 40-year-old, nicely said. I keep
Thank you.
teasing you about that, but nicely, just so nicely said. So, Diddy, if a freshman came over to you for advice, what would you tell him to do differently right away?
Yes, I think I mentioned this before. I would tell them to just find one thing, focus and find on one thing that they're passionate about. Rutgers itself, like we both know this, it's huge. Like you can't even comprehend the amount of things that are in there. If you have an idea or if you have like a club that you're interested in or a course that you want to take, it's there. But the only thing is, for freshmen specifically, I feel like that can get very overwhelming. So I would tell them that you have all the time in the world, but to use those first few months of the first semester ever to just find one thing and focus on that one thing. The more that you focus your energy on one thing, the easier it is for you to then focus on other things when you've like had something in the back for a while. So I'll give an example. That's what I did. I knew in high school that I was part of like my high school student council, and that's how I found like some of my best friends today. So I decided that, all right, I'm gonna explore that at Rutgers. And that's how I joined the Rutgers Business Governing Association. Just because I knew that advocacy was something I was passionate about, but also that student councils always have people in them that are ready to speak and they're ready to like talk to you regardless of, your background. So that's why I joined that one club. And now I'm like I already have different positions within the club. But that only happened because I had something in my mind that, all right, this is one thing I'm going to focus on. So it could be a very overwhelming experience, but I would definitely tell freshmen to take a deep breath and take like baby steps. It's all going to be okay.
Okay. Wise. Wise, wise, wise. It's funny, I'm listening to you. I was a college freshman at one time,
Hmm.
you know, and it seems uh, actually our president at that time was a guy named John F. Kennedy when I started college.
Hmm.
Um, and I can relate to some of these things because, and I'm listening to you in the wise words, and I did some of these things back in those days. I just want to go off topic a little bit, because I'm a journalist guy, and I borrowed this question from one of my favorite journalists, Barbara Walters, and I actually ask it to everybody. It's my little trademark question. So here goes. Um, Excluding family or friends,
Okay.
somebody living or dead you'd like to spend a day with, and it could be one or two or three people. There's no rules here. It's an interesting question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, there's so many. I would say, okay, the first person that comes to mind is somebody that I've always looked up to. She's no longer here, but she was like a pioneer in her own industry, and that would be Kalpana Chawla. She was the first woman in space that was of Indian origin. And I remember doing like so many different projects in middle school and high school just about Kalpana because she was so incredibly inspiring. There was a specific thing I read in like a book that was about her life. And in the book, I don't know if this is a direct quote, but she basically stood for the fact that somebody was talking to her and they were like, this has never been done before. I don't know if this can be possible. And she said, if it's never been done before, somebody has to be the first person to do it. And that's something that I carry with me even till this day, whether that's me being nervous about starting a new idea or, just taking a final. I'm like, if it's never been done before or if I'm feeling anxious, it's just because it's meant to be and it's because I'm doing something that's good. That's why I'm having like these like butterflies in my stomach. I also think Kalpana was so like remarkable in her passion for her work. And even though like I'm not interested in going in space, I was when I was young, but even though that's not what I want now, I carry that same ambition and that same passion in my line of work. So I would definitely love to, have a
Great,
conversation with her if I could.
great answer. Great answer. Um, do you have any favorite movies?
Yes, I feel like we also talked about this a few times in
Maybe,
our conversations. Yeah.
maybe, maybe.
We Yeah, I love movies. I love watching new kind of movies. The only thing I avoid are like scary like horror movies. I can do thriller. I think my top few movies would definitely be artworks that I feel like are so cinematography related and they have like different artistic elements in it that I can appreciate beyond the plot. So The two that come to mind right now are Coraline. It's like a hand animation kind of
Yeah.
movie. I'm forgetting like the term itself, but it's so cool because everything was done by hand, which I can appreciate in our world of AI. And then the second one that comes to mind is La La Land because it's just so the plot makes me cry, but the visuals are so stunning. The colors mean so much more. And there's always something new I'm learning about both of these movies, which is also something I like. I don't just like to watch movies like for the plot itself. I like to watch them for how they were made and designed and filmed. And I know that you also have a little bit of background in that. I know you were also like in a movie too, which when we were talking, I was like, wow, this is insane. So those are my two favorites.
Okay, good. Now I wrote that stuff down. I do have a great passion for movies.
Yeah.
That's why I always ask about that because movies are life. And
Mhm.
I've been involved with the Garden State Film Festival now for 10 or 12 years and
Yeah.
heavily the last few years interviewing 35 and 40
Mhm.
actors, actresses, directors, composers, screenwriters whose films are screening in the film festival. Very intense. I mean, I'm doing this stuff 10 hours a day, for 6, 7, 8, 9 days. Love every aspect of it. Love film.
Mhm.
I recently interviewed several, and it's important to me, young women filmmakers.
Right,
Uh,
absolutely.
and it was so important to me. And actually, they have a wonderful film, Golden Afternoon.
Mhm.
It was one of the most moving films that I've seen in a long, long time. Short film, 14 minutes, and it was just a fabulous interview. And we plunged into their filmmaking, their journey. It's all about journey, and the difficulties. And now I'm working with a filmmaker who's now turned. His name is Michael Hussein, and he did a wonderful film last year called The Waiting Game, and it was
Mhm.
about the old ABA, the American Basketball Association, and how it helped fuel the rebirth of the NBA, and what happened to those players from the ABA who just got lost in the shuffle and never got taken care of. Now
Mhm.
he's starting his own streaming service, and I'm plunging into that because I believe in that. So it's called the Realist Indie Film Club, and REELIST. And it's all about a networking. I'm here, and these are things I love to do, and they land in your lap, and it's a great lesson. If you're out there and you're networking and you're aware and your antenna is up.
Mhm.
So I found they found me, I found them, and I'm just thrilled about this because they concentrate on documentaries.
Mhm.
Documentaries are life.
Right.
They're our lives. And there's no monster and there's no Godzilla, eating up a city and stuff. These are documentaries about life. And it's so
Mhm.
important. And they're going to work with filmmakers and support them. They're all indie filmmakers. That whole journey. And I'm giving you a lesson. It's my parting mentor lesson.
Thank
That
you.
if you're putting yourself out there and
Yeah.
and you have your beliefs and your strengths, and things that mean a lot to you that are special,
Mhm.
and if that antenna is up there, then you're going to find stuff. And I found stuff, and I want to work with them. And I've already done one interview, and I'll do several more, and just to be involved because it's a great idea. It's not going to replace Netflix, but it's an important adjunct, especially for your generation, especially to get a hold of. Anyway, um, back to work. Back to work. We're going to talk a little bit about. Um, let's talk about. We connected through the Forward program. How important has mentorship been in your journey and whatever?
I would say it's been very important. It's truly shaped like the way I approach networking now and the way I approach my work now. Um, I think we can use like our mentorship relationship as an example when I say this. Um, it's not like a one-way relationship where I just talk to you and you give me like advice. I think it truly goes both ways. So I think when we started our relationship, I could tell right off the bat that you were willing to go above and beyond to help me. And then throughout the year, when I told Calvin that, I was interested in supply chain, I was interested in XYZ, and he still found people that I can speak to. And that just speaks to the kind of mentors that I want moving forward, are people that can help me to the best of their ability, right? But then it also goes like my way, like what can I offer in this relationship too? So whether that was like me inviting you to like the dining with the distinguished event, or me even just like asking my mom, like, hey, I have this really cool mentor that I work with. I think he's a great guy and I think you should talk to him. That shaped the way that I now view mentorship, which is that it truly is like a two-way road. And again, I don't think we ever had a point in our relationship where we were looking for something. All of this came so naturally too, which is something I admire about my mentors in my life, is that there's never something that like they're asking for, or there's never something I'm always like pushing about. It always flows naturally, which I think is what should be.
Okay, nicely said. And you have to. I'm detaching myself from the fact that I am your mentor.
Yeah.
I'm detached from that.
Yeah.
I'm interviewing you as part of the series that I do. So I'm
Right.
detached from that. One thing has nothing to do with the other, despite the fact I'm wearing a Rutgers sweatshirt today. Because hey, it was 50 degrees. Last week it was 90
I
degrees.
know. It's crazy. It's
And
crazy.
and now I get up every morning and I take my cell phone and I got to silence it actually, and I look at the temperature. And this morning, 50 degrees, and I got
I
to walk the
know.
dog later, and I can't walk in my shorts and t-shirt. I got to walk in a sweatshirt. Anyway, has there been a piece of advice, not necessarily even from me, but has there been a piece of advice that you've received that actually changed how you approach things from anybody or?
Yes, yes. I was talking to one of my other, I view them as a mentor, but I was talking to her a few days ago, and I was talking about like I want to be involved in this opportunity and I kind of want to look for this role to get involved in. And she told me, she was like, Aditi, that's all wonderful, but I think you should also try to like stay in the present. And I carry that now moving forward. I know it's only been a few days, but that's one of the best pieces of advice I got, was that there's always something going on in the world. And my dad also said this. He was like, everything that I just said right now, that's in the past too. It's so important to stay in the present, and it's good to have goals. It's good to be like future oriented, but you're just going to miss out on so many important things. I'm going to miss out on this conversation if I wasn't in the present, right? So that's one of the best pieces of advice that I've recently gotten.
Okay. By the way, what you said is hugely profound. And there's a lot of philosophies about that. Actually, it was one of the philosophies was Eckhart Tolle, who wrote a book called The Power of Now. And
Mm,
when I finally got a hold of that and read it, it was transformative to me because the only thing that's really relative is right. The only thing in this world right now that's relative, believe it or not, is you and I right here and
right,
now. What happened an hour ago doesn't mean a thing.
right,
What may happen in an hour tomorrow doesn't mean anything because it's not real. So the only thing
right.
real in this world right now is what you just said, about staying in the present. So that was very profound. It's a
Thank
whole philosophy, and it really works because it
you.
helped me. Because when I was in sales and somebody, I drove once 4 hours to sell some guys some eyeglass frames. I drove 2.5 hours. It was a 2.5 hour trip down, 2.5 hours back. And I walked in his office with my sample bags, and he said, "I don't have time to see you today." And I said, "I just drove 2.5 hours to see you. You gave me an appointment." He says, "I don't care. Goodbye." And the anger,
Yeah.
uh, the anger that when I got into the car, I wound up driving 100 miles an hour because I was so angry and got a speeding ticket. And then shortly thereafter, somebody knew how upset I was and said, "Go read The Power of Now." And I did, and it made me feel better because the minute that was over, it was over. And
Right.
but anyway, so you were very wise to say that. Do you think the power of mentorship can bridge a gap between what you learn in a classroom and in real world? Um,
Yeah, absolutely. I think that without mentorship, if you just graduated college, right? Or if you just embraced an opportunity, but you had no mentor or no guidance, I think that can really set you back. And I feel for people that haven't been able to experience having mentors because it's not easy to find somebody that is willing to support you without an ulterior motive, right? So people that have made it so far in life without mentorship, that's great. I think that I truly cherish all the mentors in my life. You or any other person that identifies as my mentor, they've all shaped some aspect of my life in such a profound way. It also goes to show that like things that you learn in a classroom or things that skills that you gain, they they're great on paper, but to see somebody that's an expert in their field or to see somebody that's gone through it before and tell you to avoid certain things or to embrace new opportunities, that those words mean so much more than everything you're learning in the class because it's real and it's happening while you're studying, right? I think during my Dining with the Distinguished event too, I was speaking to so many professionals who had studied marketing, but they weren't necessarily in the field of marketing. They were just doing other things that require being creative or having like communication skills. So it's so interesting to me that like you have these people that can tell you what's right and what's wrong. All you have to do is just be willing to listen.
okay. Funny, you
Yeah.
said marketing, and here comes a lesson.
Hmm.
You're getting a mentor-mentee lesson.
Yes,
So,
I'm ready.
hey, it is what it is. I didn't plan on this. It wasn't in my little syllabus to discuss with you, but just an example. So, I have my tortoise book, 11 national awards, and
Yeah.
I decided I needed some help marketing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, it took me an hour to write a 4-page prompt,
Hmm.
and actually, you can actually go to AI and say, "Hey, write a prompt for me for this." But I
Right.
wrote the prompt myself because I wanted, and then I gave it to AI. I gave that 4-page prompt to AI, and I do 4 different programs because Gemini is really good with graphics, and Microsoft Copilot does a lot of health stuff, but anyway, I gave that 4-page prompt to and this is what really ticks me off. It took me an hour, maybe an hour and a half to write that prompt and think about it. And I gave it to AI, and in 4 seconds, this is what ticks me off. It took me an hour and a half to write that prompt. In 4 seconds, it spit out 50 pages, marketing,
Mhm.
50 pages. And guess what? Well, I'm going to start doing this stuff today. When we're
Yeah.
finished, I'm going to start doing what they suggested because I never thought about doing this stuff. It's like unbelievable. But hey, that's our new world.
Right.
ADITI, there's some great tools.
Mhm.
So, um, you mentioned, of course, being drawn to the intersection of business and art and culture. Uh, Zimmerly is part of that.
Yes.
What does that look like to you, like in practice? Those three: business, art, culture. Does it does it have a specific look like to you? Um,
I would say
what?
it looks different, like depending on like which aspect of my life I'm talking about. I think the best example I could give is my work with the Zimmerly. Coming into the internship itself, I was very like marketing oriented. Like I'm ready to learn about like social media analytics and all these cool things. And then coming out of this internship in another like few weeks, I think I've taken away like the culture part of it and being like culturally sensitive, which is very important, especially in business too. Business, like, and I'm sure you can also relate to this too. It's all about people. It's about the work too, but it's mainly about the relationships that you build. And where that comes into play in practice is my life at RBS, right? I have to maintain certain relationships, but I also want to build new ones. And my work at the Zimmerly has given me that like sensitivity, I guess, of I don't know another word of saying this, but like reading the room, if that makes sense, and approaching different people based on our common interests is also like where that intersection I think lines up. So all of these different aspects of my life, like my work, my academics, they all tie in with the fact that it's business is just about working with different kinds of people. You also can't, I think I learned this recently too, like you can't pick and choose like different parts of personalities that you want to portray to different people. Like you have to carry yourself and you have to say that this is who I am. And you do the same thing, right? Like this is all of me and I'm going to talk to different people and I'm going to go in with a learning mindset, which I think is also important. So, I don't know if that was like a messy answer, but it looks very
Fine.
different depending on my different parts of my
Fine.
life.
That was a hard question, you know, and
Mhm.
it's a hard question to define, and you did
Yeah.
good. I always like to. I don't know enough about your generation, although I know enough because I've interviewed so many, and I've been a mentor and interacting and so many. I've interviewed a number of Gen Zs, and I get a kick out of it. Um, uh, and I'm curious about this. What does a brand, and that's an endless, what does a brand, um, uh, um, how does a brand hit you as being authentic in your generation? So, in other words, how would you approach a brand and attach yourself to a brand? Do you want that brand to really feel authentic? What are the requirements in your being that makes you attach yourself to a brand as a sophomore?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say the first thing is definitely honesty. And you can be honest about whatever qualities that you believe like that your brand stands for, right? And I might not agree with it, but I can certainly respect the fact that this brand is or this company or this organization is like that is what they stand for and they're not willing to change that. And there's obviously going to be a community of people that want to follow that too. But to also answer that question in like a different way. I think we all have our own personal brands too, right? And as a marketing student, like I'm sure I can, this just was the first thing that came in my mind is like, I have my own personal brand. Calvin, you have your own personal brand. And the one thing that ties us together is the fact that we're so open with each other too. And that honesty comes into play as well. You can fake who you are for like a day or two, maybe, but you just can't fake certain qualities about yourself and certain qualities about your work, especially if you're in a mentorship relationship or if you're working with somebody for a long period of time. So I would definitely say honesty and the courage to like stand up for your values, even if like other people might not fully agree with them. That is what makes me feel more connected to a brand, and that's what I think makes it more authentic.
Okay, nicely said. Um, and I in all our time together, we may have touched on this and since September, but what actually drew you to supply chain? Because that's not, although it's gotten so much more visibility these days than ever before. Because I guess we live in a global world more and more, and we're seeing evidences of that every day in current events with the price of
Mhm.
oil going up and stuff. But what particularly drew you to supply chain?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, it
I
is.
would say I would say that specific conversation I had with the recent Rutgers alum, she was working at like the Boston Consulting Group, and she was saying that in this world of AI, her work is so so like you could see the tangible impact that her work had. Obviously not like the next day that, after she's completed a project, now she sees like, okay, great, it's working out. But what she meant to say was that there's so much room for you to make an impact on your community. And that's what drew me to supply chain. Um, like my internship this summer that I'm going to be working at is my official title is like it has to do with social impact. And I think that's so interesting because wherever I go in my life in the future, I always want to leave an impact either that's local or global. The scale doesn't necessarily matter to me. What matters is that I can see that my work has positively influenced somebody. And in one way or another, I think supply chain as a field allows me to work on that because ultimately it's about delivering goods or doing something from one place to another. And I think nothing else is as rewarding as getting people things that they need.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And as I learned while I we were doing our mentoring
yeah,
from Sarah Otto, the supply chain in its highest form is a guarantee of peace in our world because
right.
it shares with people the right way,
Yeah,
people on all sides of the supply chain, and it
right.
was a beautiful thing that I saw and I learned, from that.
Yeah.
And it's funny. We never discussed it. Uh, we never discussed it. Watch this.
Okay.
All right, watch this. Yeah, I get a tremendous amount of people reaching out to me. I can't even who want to be interviewed.
hmm
And what I do now is I guess I ignore a lot, and they go away. So I try to be diversified. I love diversity and variability and diversity. That's why I've done interviews on 6 continents, and it's a beautiful thing. But when Sarah Otto came across my desk and I saw supply chain, I said, I thought of you.
Mm.
And of course my mind was working. Wow, this is great because I'm mentoring ADITI, she's supply chain. This is great, and I'm going to learn even more. So that was I don't think I ever mentioned that, but that was an impetus for me to want to pursue and literally in our preliminary discussion because I'm devious. And I always have, there's always an MO, a modus operandus to my, but somewhere in the middle of it, just our getting acquainted, I brought you up. Not that I was, not that I was blackmail, nothing like that, but I said coincidentally, I'm mentoring a student in supply chain at Rutgers, and we'll talk about it later. So, it wasn't bribery, but it was networking,
Right.
in its purest sense. So as we wind down,
Mhm.
we're going to wind down because this is a Saturday and you got stuff to do, and
Yes.
I got stuff to do. You're actively seeking opportunities, and this is a little bit heavy. What kind of impact do you want to make in your career? And you already kind of said that, uh,
Yeah.
in different shapes and forms. You said that. Uh, you do want to make an impact. And by the way, you can make a huge impact in bettering the world of supply chain.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of different things that I want to like leave my mark on. Um, I think the first thing that comes to mind because I'm in Rutgers is like how can I help my Rutgers community like even after I graduate? And you can also, I'm sure, relate to this as like once you're part of this like wonderful group of people, I just think that it's so important to give back to. One of the impacts I want to make in my career is definitely helping out other younger graduates, like even after I've left Rutgers. So if there is like anybody that's listening that is thinking about going to Rutgers, or if you're a freshman too, I might not know enough at the moment, But I'm sure that, 10 years from now or 20 years from now, when I do have like enough experience under my belt, I would love to help out my fellow Rutgers community too. I think work-wise, I think I touched on this before. I would love to make like tangible impacts, whether that's within supply chain and like sustainability, or if that's within branding and marketing. I think what I value most is like seeing what my work has like come to and seeing it come to life. So that's also something I'd like to see.
And that was perfectly, wonderfully well said. And that was the last thing I want to ask you because you incorporated the last two things together.
Mhm.
And the whole notion of giving back is a wonderful. I mean, I did it. Uh,
Yeah.
I didn't do it by design. I just wrote. Um, it's funny. I just wrote uh, um, a newsletter, one of my six newsletters, and it talks about how how I innocently went to a football game 30 years ago with my son, my first football game. And then the following season he liked it. We went to more football, basketball, and then it was the first time by the way, that was the first time I was ever on New Brunswick campus because I'm from Newark.
Right.
And so we went to a football game and the whole growth of how I got involved into giving back. So that one little innocent football game led to down the road some years, led to my being on campus 150 times a
Hmm.
year as a retired person, obviously. Um, and then the whole notion of giving back. I wanted to give back. I was doing some really good things in journalism and broadcasting. Of course, I didn't know what the hell I was doing because I
Hmm.
wasn't trained for this. I was just winging it. But it was the whole notion of giving back to my alma mater that gave to me. And that's my story. It's your story.
Hmm.
So, we've finished this what I think is an amazing, wonderful it should be seen by armies of Rutgers people for all kinds of reasons. Maybe it will be. We'll work on that. You'll work on it. I'll work on it because just getting people to know you and how truly grounded and how you have a grasp on things as a sophomore. I said to you before we went on air, do you know what a sophomore means in Latin? And you didn't
Yeah.
know. And I said, sophomore means wise fool. So you're wise, but you're not you, but wise fool. But you're much beyond that definition. And that's why this year has been so incredibly special to me and to be continued. So thank
Mhm.
you, Aditi. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Go are you. And we will be in touch. And I'm going to stop recording now. Don't leave. We're going to do a 2 minute wrap. Uh,
Okay.
and we're good. Thank you so much for giving me part of your Saturday.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We can't go swimming. It's too cold, but whatever. Thank you, Aditi.